AVAC's quarterly review. Doing some push-ups. Get it in.
Yeah, Nathan knows the vibes. Let's go.
Woo! Woo!
Let's give us a few moments, everybody. We're waiting for our speakers to come on in, and then we're going to get this thing started. Just give us about 2 to 3 minutes until then. Just hang out and listen to the vibes. Bet you didn't know that you were going to be introed in after that epic music right there, Austin. How you doing, good sir?
I missed it. I'm good. How you doing, Dave?
Good, man. Glad to hear. Just getting everybody up here. Trying to get Daniel up here and get Uzman. And then we can get this thing started in just another couple minutes, my friends. Just getting the speakers up here. We have a lot to talk about. A lot happened in AVAX in Q1, and we're talking about all of it. Oh, that's lovely. We got Morgan here as well. Let me go ahead and get Morgan up here.
Can we talk about some of the things that happened today, even if they weren't announced in Q1?
You know what? We can do it. we have some exciting stuff. Yeah. Let's we could for sure talk about it. Let's talk about it a little bit towards the end, just to give our folks who want to hear our recap of Q1, give them a chance to hear everything, and then we definitely got to go into that for sure because we got a lot of stuff going on. Let's see. Trying to get Daniel up here. Daniel, I invited you to speak. If you're having a hard time, you know how Twitter Spaces go. Oh, yes. Lovely. We got you up here. How you doing? We got Morgan up here. Perfect. We're going to get this thing started in just a couple minutes. Just waiting on a few more folks and we can get this thing going. Oh, lovely. We got Parker up here. Let's go. How's everybody doing today, man?
Woo! Doing well.
Glad to hear. Actually, I'm glad you're here, my friend. Uzman, I saw you on pause, man. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, man. I was just gonna say it was a pretty light news day today. I don't know if you guys saw the news out there today. It's pretty light.
Oh yeah, just a little something.
Messed around and got a triple double, boys. I'm just saying, freaking people every day like MJ. That's all.
I love the quotes. We got to quote some Kendrick a little bit later as well, my friend.
Yeah.
For anyone who
Don't
doesn't
get
know
Dan
me.
started on Kendrick, man. It'll be on TikTok all day.
That's an interesting.
No, I want to get Dan started on Kendrick.
I'm down to debate which album's better.
I mean, we all know it's Good Kid, Mad
No,
City.
see,
so, I mean, it's not really
and
much
this is
of
my
a debate
reply.
there.
I got a bone to pick. So
I like it.
Yeah, always.
I hate it all.
Good, we got Steven up here as well. We'll go ahead and get everything started, my friends. I would like to welcome everybody to the AVAX quarterly review. We're talking about Q1 today. I am joined by some of my lovely hosts. I'm joined by Nathan Windsor of Landslide Network, as well as Alex Lumley of Savvy DeFi. Say what's up, my friends.
Yo.
Wow.
If you guys said anything, then that means that my audio is rugged. And it is tragic. Did they in fact say they said things? Okay. So my audio is rugged. So we're gonna have to do this the other way. Give me just 1 second, folks. I'm gonna log in from my computer. Unfortunately, there's gonna be a 5-second delay, but at least I will be able to hear people. So we're gonna have to do this the Yeah, you guys know how Twitter Spaces goes. It's very, very unfortunate. But we're gonna keep this show rolling, everybody. We don't let anything stop us. Nothing can stop us. And so I'm joined by my lovely co-host, as well as a bevy of AVAX community builders and community members. I'm so excited to have everybody here. I'm joined with Usman, Ava Labs, Developer Relations. Say what's up, my friend.
What's up?
Oh, perfect. I can hear Usman. That is lovely. I'm also joined by Parker Heath, Ava Labs Gaming BD. Say what's up, my friend.
Well, thank you. You're too kind. Hey, everybody. What's up?
Hey. Oh, man, you got a soundboard, too. Let's go. This is great. I'm also joined by Morgan Krupetsky. That's Ava Labs Director of BD. Say hello.
Hey guys, how are you? I'm also very impressed that you got my last name on the first try.
Hey, I was actually practicing, so thank you. Also joined by Daniel Colleen, Ava Labs Senior BD. Say what's up, my friend.
Let's go. I want to match your energy the whole time because you're full of it, the energy. So I want to keep up with that.
Dan, you know, if there's anything that I'm full of, it is definitely a whole bunch of energy, as well as love for Good Kid, Mad City, over to Pimple Butterfly. And next up, I am also joined by Stephen Gates, Gogo Pool's founder and CEO. Say what's up.
Howdy. Awesome seeing everybody.
Glad you are here, my friend. And last, but of course not least, I'm also joined by Austin Barrick of Coin Fund. Say what's up, my friend.
Hey, everyone. Glad to chat today.
Oh, we're so happy to have you, my friend. We also got lovely Patrick got here as well. I'm also joined by Patrick O'Grady. That is Ava Labs Head of Engineering. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. Can you hear me all right? Let's see. I joined here a little late. Excited to talk to everybody. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we can hear you perfectly, man. Thank you so much for taking the time out to join us today and talk about everything that happened in AVAX in Q1. Just to kind of go over the agenda that we got going on today, we're going to start off everything. We're going to talk about subnets and innovations that happened in AVAX. We're going to talk about Hyper SDK, AWM, and Gogo tools. Of course, we're going to talk about the Cortina update and Snowman++, of course. And then we're going to get the VC perspective from Austin Barrick. He's going to talk a little bit about why he's so excited about Avalanche moving into Q2. Next up, we'll go into gaming with Parker. We're going to talk about some of the innovations that happened in gaming, as well as we're going to talk about that loco partnership, as well as the TSM partnership. And then, of course, we're going to kick it over to Morgan Kupetsky and Daniel Kaling to round everything off. We're going to talk about the partnerships and innovations that got announced. We're talking about Shopify. We're talking about Amazon. These are huge, huge partnerships, and very, very excited to talk about everything. And then we'll round out everything with some closing remarks from our lovely panel here. I guess just to start everything off, I'm going to go ahead. I know, Patrick, you just got in, but I'm going to pick on you immediately. Can you talk about some of the updates that happened in subnets? And let's kind of start off with the Hyper SDK.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, as we look at like all of what happened in Q1, right? So, like right at the tail end of Q4 last year is when Avalanche Warp Messaging shipped and Avalanche Go 195. So the first warp message on mainnet was sent around that time. And so as we entered into Q1, what was really important was finding more ways to build interesting virtual machines on Avalanche. I think most people at that time really still thought that like developing and deploying virtual machines on Avalanche was a function of how many EVMs do you want. And I think that really, is sell short what the capability and possibility is. But whenever we said that, people are like, well, do you have any other examples of like things you could do that are using a different virtual machine framework or SDK framework or anything like that? And the unfortunate answer was typically no. Like we had the Spaces virtual machine, which is a simple kind of like name service-esque virtual machine, but nothing generic or powerful enough that really was interesting or at least rivaled the EVM in any way. And so the Hyper SDK was our answer to that, which was me staying up every night from like 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. writing code about how you could potentially build a generic virtual machine that could still retain, a lot of speed and performance, but be Avalanche native and take advantage of the best that I think Avalanche has to offer. And so the Hyper SDK, was probably our, this and Cortina, the largest contributions Avalabs has made to the Avalanche ecosystem in Q1. And hopefully, we'll continue doing that with the Hyper SDK, pushing WASM support on there. And we just finished the Avalanche Warp Messaging integration into Hyper SDK as well. So, yeah.
Quick question on that, Patrick. What does supporting WASM mean in this context?
Yeah, so I mean, I think in the case of the Hyper SDK, most people are like, cool, I can build some sort of like application-specific interaction with the Hyper SDK. So, I put out two examples. One, the token VM, which lets you mint tokens, trade things, and swap between other token VMs. I also put out the index VM, which lets you like kind of annotate data on the web. But one of the things that excites people the most about blockchains is the ability to permissionlessly deploy contracts or generic functionality to a chain that other people can interact with, right, and permissionlessly build on top of. Right now, the Hyper SDK doesn't have that support. So if you want to build new functionality into it, you have to deploy a new type of what we call an action, and that's just not flexible enough to really become a primary virtual machine for many people. Maybe it's great for super optimized interactions, but typically you want some mix of very optimized actions with totally generic interaction. And so as we thought about ways to do this, one of the things that came up time and time again was using WASM and specifically the deterministic subset of instructions of WASM that allow you to compile many common languages like C, C++, Rust, and even assembly script into this WASM intermediate format that we could then execute on top of the Hyper SDK so that people could deploy arbitrary contracts. So what it means when I say WASM is contracts, as people call them. I would say they're more like programs though, but the lingo these days is smart contracts.
Dope. And WASM meaning the WebAssembly intermediary?
Yep, correct.
Okay,
Exactly.
so like a WASM transpiler, they'll compile out. Does it compile out? Maybe this is
well, it's actually the
whole.
It's actually the whole WASM engine, not just a transpiler. So it like what we would embed inside of the Hyper SDK is actually like a WASM runtime, not some transpiler into like some Hyper SDK thing. But the Hyper SDK itself would execute WASM on chain. Yeah.
Got it. Dope.
Yeah, we're big WASM fans over here. We're about to open source the Cosm WASM SDK in a couple weeks.
Yeah, so Cosm WASM relies on a runtime we've been looking at called WASMer, which is one of the most popular ones. I think it's also used by Near. It's also used by, I think there's one or two more folks. But long story short, it's this really powerful framework. And it seems like the WASM runtime part is getting pretty commoditized at this point. And the part that people find interesting is actually the injection of different functions into the WASM environment that any contract can call, as well as kind of the tooling you can use to deploy down into WASM. So yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of like the EVM of other stuff. Maybe it's a good way to describe it.
I'm curious, Patrick, because I'm not like a dev, so like my knowledge of WASM and SDKs is sort of limited. If I'm just like a developer, why does like a Hyper SDK's release? Why does that get me so excited?
Yes, good question. So I mean, it all comes down to eventually transactions per dollar. How many transactions can a user submit per dollar? And then how many transactions can a subnet process, assuming that validators process per dollar? And really the hope of a lot of the stuff we do in making things cheaper and easier to run is maximizing the transactions, or let's say the resource efficiency per dollar that you can run a whole network on. Because eventually that ends up being how useful the chain is, right? Like if your max throughput on the network is super high, but your ratio of transactions to dollars also is terrible, right? Like, yeah, you can process 1 million transactions, but maybe it costs you like per second, but maybe it costs you like $100 million to do that, right? It's not super useful. But if instead you can process, 20,000 transactions per second at the same cost efficiency that you could process maybe 15 transactions per second on the EVM, all of a sudden that becomes really interesting to a lot of people. And so the Hyper SDK is dedicated to driving that number up. So the ratio of transactions per users up. So basically making it sustainable to have extremely high throughput networks by taking advantage of the best of what Avalanche has to offer.
Got you. Okay. No, you got it, Austin. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily take the conversation too technical of a turn, but I think there's some interesting things as part of the Hyper SDK that's maybe worth digging a little deeper in, like dynamic state sync, and then some of the optimizations that have been done on like nonce and expiring transactions, and also like state prefetching and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, how much time we got? Like
take the rest of the hour.
Yeah, I mean, they all serve the same purpose, which is like, how can you sustainably process more transactions and thus make everything cheaper? I think the core innovation I'll talk about there is really wrapping this thing we call the Merkle database, which is the thing we're building, which is a path-based radix trie that basically is the state backend for the Hyper SDK and will soon be the state backend for the X chain as well as the P chain, which is just hopefully a really efficient Merkle database. And the reason why it's efficient is that it's very good at getting rid of data that is no longer necessary to validate blocks. So for example, I ran a DevNet yesterday, sustained 7,500 TPS across, I think it was like 6 nodes in AWS. I processed 120 million transactions. But the state store requirement after processing 120 million transactions was 125 megabytes, because it's really good at getting rid of state that is no longer useful. Now, if you do that with other databases in other virtual machines, you're not going to get 125 megabytes for doing something like that. And so, as we think about, what sort of innovations we're providing to the Hyper SDK, if you're building on a foundation of sand, you can only go so far. And so we're spending a lot of money and resources and time building out the Merkle database because it's so core to being able to actually do any of this performantly, right? Like if I can process 100 million transactions, but then I end up writing like 20 terabytes of data, probably not good enough. But if I can process 100 million transactions and write 125 megabytes of data, and that stays constant for the number of accounts participating, now we're talking.
Maybe just to take it up to a little bit higher of a level, and as someone that didn't even know how to spell SDK before I took on this role, I think part of why we're, I think, excited about Hyper SDK and other SDKs and VMs kind of rolling out within the Avalanche ecosystem is the idea that Avalanche kind of started, and it is obviously EVM compatible, and a lot of our partners obviously are building using EVM, but at the same time, as different VMs come out that are kind of optimized for different types of use cases, like those in like financial services, for example, Avalanche is able to adapt and kind of grow with the development of different VMs. So that's something that I think is really exciting for us, where as different use cases come out and as different kind of innovations come out, it's something where the network can kind of grow and adapt to those. And obviously, Hyper SDK is headed very much in that direction. So at a high level, that's kind of how I look at it. And I think over the coming months, you guys will see others kind of building out different SDKs and VMs to really kind of take advantage of Avalanche's architecture.
Well, I'm excited for that future where we start seeing all those VMs start to get built. I want to take it in a little bit of a different direction towards some tooling that's being built for subnets. GoGoPool recently released GoGo tooling to help out with subnet development. Stephen, can you kind of take the reins and just give folks a little overview about everything that was built?
Yeah, so that is in a slightly different vein. So like what Morgan was saying, it seems like most teams are building using the subnet EVM, and even as we're building our own subnet EVM things and hosting different subnets that are using subnet EVM, there seems to be this unmet need of single node development, where right now there's, I think this is going to get pretty technical again, but right now there's some pretty good tooling around having multiple nodes running on your laptop and then you playing with that. But if you're only doing the subnet EVM and that's really the only thing you care about, then we basically just took that tooling and cut out 90% of things that weren't related to subnet EVM, and then just exposed a couple endpoints for people, so that now within just a couple minutes, you can have a subnet EVM running on your laptop with the RPC URL and just play around with different Bugle piles. And it's really meant to be just like one little utility in the toolkit. Something we're excited about is kind of expanding on this a lot more. We're kind of planning out what that would look like right now. But I find this as just purely complementary to all the good work Patrick and co are doing, where I think the future of Avalanche is going to be this high-performant VM agnostic network. Right now, most teams are getting kind of bogged down with the subnet EVM and different kind of pain points or friction points that they're having with that. So we just kind of gathered this open source repo or wrote to this repo just like help out a couple people that we were working with working alongside for their subnets, and then just kind of open source it for people. And now we're looking to kind of flesh that out a little bit more, because it seems to be becoming pretty useful for at least the current wave or the current cohort of people who are working on subnet EVM.
And Stephen, can you go over a few pain points that you kind of noticed from people who are working on subnet EVMs?
Yeah, so this, without getting too insanely technical, I think the main thing I think Patrick, you said this and this resonated with me, is that for new developers, like people are comfortable now with Solidity. And then for new devs who want to kind of jump into building an app chain, because either they have a really cool idea or because or there's some sort of pain point they're having that requires an app chain, people like devs aren't the type that'll just pick a technology and just run with it. It's more like ramping up of trust and kind of playing with the different knobs and levers and understanding what the different trade-offs are before they fully commit to like building out a full product suite. And in terms of the first pain point we're seeing from at least with the teams that we were working with is this metric of time to RPC. So how, like, if you start the timer of here's my laptop, and now I want to like play with the subnet EVM and just test out Avalanche consensus and maybe run a couple different unit tests on it, deploy my NFT marketplace on it, and just try it out, just to see how it feels. Understand what the limitations are. Then the first milestone you'll have is getting back, like setting up the computer and then getting back the RPC URL. And it was just as they're using existing tooling, we're just getting feedback. We're seeing people getting stuck, like asking us a lot of config questions of like, okay, here's Avalanche Go, but what version of Go do I need? Or, oh, I accidentally used an outdated docs. Like, let me reconfigure my environment, or just whatever. It's just like these kind of admin overhead. So we're like, okay, well, what if there's an already compiled out Avalanche Go binary for people, and they compiled out some EVM binary for people, and then we just wrap that into this thing called Google Tool. I'll just boot both of them up. It'll manage the instances, and then now people can we can distribute that, and people can start playing with the subnet EVM technology within like maybe a minute and a half, just to get everything set up and to get back their RPC URL. And once they have the RPC URL, then they get to like build the stuff that they actually wanted to build. So that was the main pain point that we saw with Google Tool.
Got you. Appreciate you for that, Stephen. We're gonna go ahead and head on over back to we're gonna focus more so on C chain with this next kind of questions, with these next kind of line of questioning. I know that there was a Cortina update. Patrick, would you be able to talk a little bit about what kind of came from that update?
Yeah, I mean, if first off, if you run a Fuji anything, so Fuji subnets or Fuji node, make sure to update today, because the activation on Fuji is tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. But the Cortina update is really about unifying a lot of the development on Avalanche behind Snowman++. And so the X-Chain will be linearizing tomorrow at that time. And so what that will entail, huge change to the underlying X-Chain, actually like infrastructure and what it means to run the X-Chain. But at the same time, will finally allow us to really start pushing the X-Chain forward. So adding more complex transaction types and making it much more efficient to actually sync when starting up your Avalanche Go node. And so it's something we've been working on for over a year and a half at this point. So it's really exciting to see it finally come to fruition. The other one is obviously the P-Chain deferred batching of fees. And that will really help, with the UX of creating transactions on the P-Chain, which right now, because of liquid staking, end up giving people tons and tons of UTXOs that they have to deal with. And the last one is just increasing the C-Chain gas limit, which will be really nice for deploying more complex smart contracts, and also interacting with contracts in more complex ways. So I think all of those are going to be awesome benefits. I think one of them is going to be behind the scenes with the X-Chain linearization. You won't have to change how you construct transactions, but it'll make it a lot easier for different people to integrate with the X-Chain, which in a DEG format, a lot of exchanges and folks are not really well suited to deal with.
Just a quick follow-up question on that, Patrick. You had said that Cortina is going to allow for more complex transaction types. Just for a person who is not super technically inclined, I should say, could you kind of explain what are the transaction types that you can kind of get going right now, and then how do they get more complex with Cortina?
Yeah. So this is applying just to the X-Chain for now. I'm referring to. So on the X-Chain right now, the transactions you can perform, and I would guess most people who haven't even used the X-Chain in depth, but lets you mint NFTs, transfer those NFTs, transfer coins around. And the reason for that is that there's no canonical state at a particular point during Vertex execution. So all that means is if you're using the C-Chain and you're interacting with the smart contract, you can do that safely because everyone agrees on what the state of that smart contract is when you interact with it. On a DEG, though, that's not true. So based on where the vertex is and what it's connected to, the state may be very different for different people based on what they've seen in the network. And as a result, you can't do anything that relies on some notion of shared state. And so you can't really create a true DEX on the X-Chain right now. And so, for example, what we'll be able to do once the linearization occurs is incorporate any number of different transaction types on the exchange that rely on interacting with the shared state. And so those sort of things could be, creating some sort of native DEX, maybe in the exchange to let people trade subnet assets. You could have all sorts of interesting. Think about it as anything that you could build as a C-chain contract, you could implement now on the exchange as a different transaction type. But it's really about, unifying the development there so that R&D is more targeted. And the other thing is that the exchange without a canonical state and without Snowman++ does not really work with warp messaging. So if we were going to try to bring assets into the exchange from a subnet using warp, it wouldn't work. And so by transitioning to Snowman++, we also unblock that capability.
Patrick, can you not build a DEX because of the way that DEXs are currently built? The update from Goon was that it was like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
So you can do it, but it ends up basically relying on like UTXO based smart contracts, where like you'd have to incorporate some number of UTXOs as an input to like some sort of trading transaction, which is possible, but not what people want, I guess, or enjoy. So you can do it.
Even the UTXO maxis, like the Bitcoin maxis.
Well, I mean, so the problem is you end up with limited throughput, right? Like you can only have one swap per time, and then when you want another swap, you have to take the output of the previous UTXO and use that for your next swap. So you end up basically serializing interaction with the DEX in a way that is much worse from a UX perspective than just all sending the same transaction, because everyone basically gets their transaction invalidated as soon as there's one transaction that interacts with the DEX. If that makes sense. Like the UTXO you were importing is no longer valid. You have to now reissue the transaction with the latest state of the UTXO in the DEX. So this is the problem that Cardano ran into with a lot of their smart contracting stuff originally. And then they made like UTXO transactions malleable to avoid that. It ends up being this huge problem that has a questionable UX at best for people that are used to interacting with the EVM. So possible, but maybe not enjoyable, let's say.
So is this some like future scenario that will roll back in some other scenario if the DEX landscape can deal with UTXOs?
Roll back. No, I don't think so. I think it's we don't really make too forward-looking of comments because I think that the space is always changing. All I know is right now, multi-step UTXO sequencing on smart contracts with no canonical state is pretty much an unsolved and really undesirable situation. No one's really looking for or trying to innovate on that. So, but unfortunately, I do need to run a little early now for another. I have to meet important meetings internally. So it's been great to get to talk to you guys, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for coming through, Patrick. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
So now we're gonna not wrap everything up. I don't know why I was about to say that. I was gonna say wrap everything into some sort of burrito here, some sort of knowledge summary burrito. But I wanted to kind of get Usman's opinion on, we have AWM that got announced. We have Hyper SDK that got released. We have Cortina. We have all these different things that happen in Q1. How do these updates affect subnets and AVAX moving forward into Q2, Usman?
Yeah, that's a great question, Breevy. And I think Patrick set the foundation really well here in this talk about all the infrastructure that has been built on the engineering side in the past year to 6 months and 3 months that we've seen come out and is coming out daily, right? So you've got all these new SDKs that make it easier for devs to build virtual machines in the Hyper SDK. You've got updates to the Avalanche core platform with Cortina. You've got Avalanche warp messaging, all these pieces of infrastructure that are really going to accelerate subnet development and make it easier for devs to actually view subnets as their preferred building platform. And in that process of building that infrastructure, you've already seen many different builders, developers, enterprises, and companies start to look at subnets and say, there's something really interesting going on there. And as this infrastructure expands, especially with the Hyper SDK, it's something that I'm really excited for. Avalanche Web Messaging, all these things are really going to accelerate development in things that on the dev side. So what you're starting to see, at least what we're starting to see on the DevRel side, is that there's a lot of developers who are coming and starting to experiment with different primitives on Avalanche. So you have a couple different pools that I've seen personally on the VM developer side. It's a small pool of developers, but the ones that are there are very powerful. You're starting to see application specific blockchain devs, and I think that's what the Hyper SDK is going to really encourage. Super high throughput applications that need to be able to run their own runtime at the VM layer are going to be able to utilize the Hyper SDK to do so. But then you're also seeing this other pool, which is fully Turing complete, smart contract compatible virtual machines being ported over to Avalanche to be able to run their own like layer one ecosystems, right? Kind of like what you're seeing with a lot of different other app chain solutions. So there's a lot of developers who are starting to look at this infrastructure that's being built that Patrick highlighted, and starting to see the possibilities of what's can be built here. And I think with more use cases that come out, and I think there's some really awesome BD folks on this call as well who can expand upon this point, but you're starting to see more partnerships come out like every week, right? Like I never know when these partnerships come out. They just come out and I'm just like, oh crap, like we're killing it, right? So you see all the awesome folks who are actually using the tech. And I think it's only going to snowball into a larger, rush to the tech as more infrastructure is built out.
I think that's an absolutely excellent answer, Usman. Like all these different things, they're going to accelerate development for, subnets and projects on Avalanche in a way that we can't even really fathom right now in this space. But, it's just really exciting to kind of see the number of developers coming into the space start to tick up because, yes, like you said, eventually it will hit that kind of space where there will be this reckoning where everyone will understand that subnets are the go-to platform for developers to build on. So very, very excited for that future. Now, I want to bring Austin in here so that we can talk a little bit about the VC perspective on Avalanche and subnets moving forward. Austin, can you just tell me a little bit about what you're excited about, what projects you're kind of excited about moving into Q2?
Yeah, really excited about all of the work that Avalanche has done, obviously on the subnet side, and in particular, what that enables for builders to develop customized, flexibly constructed, and performant app-specific chains. And we're seeing that in two main categories. So within DeFi, and I use the word DeFi broadly, but you can think like completely permissionless on-chain DeFi or institutional use cases like we saw with KKR or other folks that are trying to tokenize real-world assets and bring them on-chain. And then on the gaming side, so, TSM, Godzilla, a whole bunch of other folks. DFK came last year and is one of the leading subnets. So that's something that's really exciting that, the infrastructure is really finally, getting into place after, building a layer 0 and a layer 1 blockchain takes a really long time. And I think people sometimes get too excited in the short term about what's nearby, but then, don't have long enough of a view. And we're getting to the point where like AWS is here, and FCK has been ready and more amount of outchains that are coming to market throughout the rest of 2023. I'm really excited about to for that to be able to showcase what it can offer, and others are already behind the scenes but haven't just hit mainnet. So we're bullish the ecosystem and the network, but outside of that, a lot of strong teams, and particularly teams that don't have a lot of exposure to crypto otherwise, but realize the benefits. Like, for example, SK and the announcement that happened today, like on the loyalty engagement side, for a lot of Korean consumers, how subnets are able to enable kind of more robust use cases. So really excited about all that stuff coming to market, and it's all really coming to head right now.
Real quick, Austin, would you be able to give us just a quick overview of what's going on with the newest announcement with SK?
Yeah, so and I didn't know anything about the announcement before it was released today, so I'm learning along with everyone else, and maybe some of the people behind the scenes.
Hey, Austin, your audio is rugging. We may need to come back to him when his audio comes back.
Sorry, everybody. I'm having some audio. Yeah, I'm having some audio hiccups. Austin, I couldn't hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, in a bad cell service area. But yeah, it's one of the largest Korean corporates with tens of millions of real everyday users that have no exposure to the crypto ecosystem, and they're building loyalty engagement products that leverage blockchains and are building on subnets to do that.
Got you. I'm gonna have to research into SK a little bit more just so I can kind of get the full scope of everything. Because I mean, this just got announced like a few hours ago, so this is pretty fresh.
Austin, can you go into a little bit about how CoinFund views the regulatory
Nathan, I know you're saying something, but unfortunately, I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I was able to hear the question. It was just how we view the regulatory environment.
And yeah, the regulatory environment, like U.S., EU, and global.
Yeah, so I mean, as a lot of folks are aware, it's been challenging over the last couple of months, and what everyone in the industry is looking for is some clear, bright lines on what we're able to do, what we're not able to do, versus operating in an opaque environment and then finding out the rules after the fact. And I think over the next couple of years, we'll get there. But there's a lot of people in different parts of government that are actually very open to crypto and realize the financial inclusion that it can drive. And then there's also a lot of elements of crypto that are being more widely adopted in Europe with some of the new frameworks that they're building out in Hong Kong, that they're opening up the environment for more trading and more retail participation. So while there's been some recent actions in the United States, I think it's not something that we're concerned about long term for sure. And we think that this is just a part of the feeling out process that happens in an emerging industry. And we believe it'll get to the right point. So not sure I provided too much specifics or clarity there, but it doesn't change our long term outlook at all. And being at CoinFund and working in crypto and just being a part of this industry, I think we've all made the bet that there's not going to be any draconian regulatory outcome, and that crypto will be a very, very meaningful part of what the world looks like and how the world operates in the years and decades to come.
Appreciate you for that, Austin. Sorry, guys, I'm having some audio issues on my end, so I'm like kind of delayed in my listening here. But I wanted to move the conversation towards gaming on AVAX because we got my guy Parker here, and I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what are some innovations that you've been seeing built on AVAX currently. What kind of games have you been seeing be built?
Oh man, I would go ahead and say and direct you. Do we have a little banner at the top for the Gunzilla announcement today. I think that one's pretty significant, if I can speak for myself. But we're seeing a lot of innovation on the form of subnets and what games are trying to do to basically add value to future game developers. So we've seen this with Gunzilla, where they're essentially building out their AAA title game and allowing future game developers to leverage the technology that they're building and to deploy their games on the subnet, right? And so not only are they building a very legit AAA game, they're also leveraging the toolkits that we're providing via Avalanche subnets to basically bring to market other games. And so I think that's one thing we're about to see a lot more of, and hopefully future announcements as well, and just driving innovation to the game developers to really leverage this toolkit and SDK that the engineering team has provided. That's something I'm super excited about. And then another thing is really just making the onboarding process super seamless for the end users. And so of course that does take a little bit of time. We're all very conscious of how clunky the olden days of onboarding into Web3 could look like, whether that's memorizing a 12 character or 12 word seed phrase to make sure that your keys are safe, all the way down to having to onboard. And I think this goes for everybody in the Avalanche community, onboarding to an exchange, going to the X chain, the C chain, right? We finally slowly developed a very streamlined process for people to onboard and take part in this open economy that is Web3 gaming. So that's one thing that I'm very excited about.
For the onboarding part of things, what have you been seeing teams do differently than what's been being done in the past?
So we have found a lot of infrastructure providers and are currently still finding partnerships in the world of infrastructure providers to make the seamless onboarding experience. I'll just say from a recent announcement I think we had with the Stardust team, who have made a very robust product on the user experience side of things. So this comes down to what gamers really care about, and that is playing a fun game. They don't care about going into a game, unlocking a digital asset, having to go to a third-party web browser or marketplace to list their asset and potentially find a buyer or seller depending on which side of the market you're on. Gamers just want to play a game, and if they see a cool skin that they want, then they should be able to do that all within the realms of the user interface, right? And so I think Stardust and a couple of other partners that we have really have developed and provided their time and resources into making this super seamless user experience. So that's what we're seeing on our side.
See, I love that there's been a focus on the user experience, because it is kind of like you said. If I'm John B and I'd like to play a video game on Avalanche, I have to learn a lot of different steps just in order to hit that play button. And so it's good that teams are focusing on getting rid of those barriers to entry so that more users can kind of come in, and then so that not just Web3 users can actually use the game, but Web2 users, just normal kind of gamers, that they can also use the game, play the game as well. Parker, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, we've had some huge announcements in Q1, and one of those announcements is the partnership with Loco. Can you talk a little bit about how that partnership came about, and just give a quick overview of Loco?
Yeah, I can definitely touch on that, and I'll also pass the baton to my fellow partner Dan Colleen afterwards, who I know helped kind of liaison a lot of that conversation. But from the gaming side, I will say the real interest for why we focused in on Loco is we've gotten to a point in the market where we have several of these key games that we've announced, right? Shrapnels of the world, Gunzillas. This is a non-exhaustive list, of course, but a lot of games that are finally to the point that they're actually fun to play, and we need to find distribution channels. And so, a key focus of ours is, who do we partner with in order to get the most visibility to our games that we've sunk so much development time and costs into supporting? How do we actually drive users and adoption to these games? And so partnering with Loco was, a key, step in that right direction. not only from the distribution channel, but also from the demographics, right? That's us kind of really breaking into the Asia market, especially on the like esports and entertainment side of things. But I can let Dan talk a little bit more about what they're doing on the Web3 element side of things, but just wanted to touch on, the rationality behind the partnership initially. Sorry, Dan, I know I'm tossing you one, but I know you have more context.
I was not. I was talking. I did not listen to the last. I was listening. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. Just wanted to talk about more of like the relationship with us and Loco. I know that's been largely the NFT vertical that's been supporting, and
Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure how much you talked about the game, but the NFT component is basically a way for basically like a Top Shots model for the streamers in the ecosystem to maximize their growth. So obviously, you guys are familiar with large streaming platforms like Twitch. Loco in India has the same effect, and people are very obsessive with the followings of their streamers, so they want to get in on the action of their streamers. And then as the streamers get, play games and offer opportunities to collect their NFTs, there's like loyalty systems that come on top of that. So big audience, big effect, expecting the chain to have a lot of volume just because they have the 30 million plus monthly active viewers. So really excited for that one overall.
Wow, that's really cool. So they're doing so you said they're doing a Top Shot model, right? So if I'm a gamer, they're going to basically not screenshot, but like take clips of my plays, and then people will be able to buy them as NFTs. Is that correct?
In portion, yes, that is correct. But also, there's the component of actually like, the moments are collectibles, as well as there's kind of like these down the rabbit hole loyalty systems that open up more opportunities as well within the platform.
Well, that is really, really cool. Very excited for that. I mean, for anybody out there who's like an esports kind of gamer or watches esports, like that seems really, really cool. Like I'm one of those people that will sit down and watch 2-3 hours of a video game as opposed to playing 2 to 3 hours of a video game. So that seems kind of cool that I'd be able to. I kind of harken back to my StarCraft days of Flash versus Jaedong. If I could have got some Jaedong clips as NFTs, I might be sitting pretty right now. So that's pretty cool. Now there was also very, very, very huge partnership announced in TSM. Would either you or Parker be able to talk about that?
That's a Parker thing.
Yeah, hopefully the beanie and my PFP gives that away, but that is due in part by the relationship that we have with TSM, and so super excited about those guys. Been working closely with them for about on a year. I think when I got onboarded back in April last year, I just got into the Ava Labs world, and I think we were already having those initial conversations with Andy and the TSM team, and I was like, wow, this is cool. Like I'm actually getting to work with, people that I've, watched stream and, kind of just see as like legitimate players in the space in the gaming world for quite some time. And, finally brought that vision to life here, I guess, mid-February or mid-March, that is. And, the real goal there is to facilitate, right, esport tournament transactions. It allows players and fans to store, sell, purchase digital assets, which I think is very cool. And the real value driver for the on-chain perspective from the Ava Lab side and the Avalanche community side is all this is done with, the AVAX token, right? And so that really drives, real adoption to mainstream gaming, and something that I personally am very excited about as far as just having utility in the gaming world with, Avalanche in general.
And for anybody in here who's not privy to TSM, Parker, can you just kind of give folks just a quick overview of who TSM is? Because they're pretty
For
big.
sure. Yeah, of course. And excuse my my vertical expertise. I feel like everybody should know what, like, everything gaming, but I forget sometimes. I got to stop and kind of reassess my audience. So thank you. TSM is, I would say, one of the largest esports organizations by reach. So, social media engagement, impressions, and then I've been around the block since, wow, early 20. When was I? I started watching the TSM team stream on Twitch. It might have actually been Justin TV at the time, back in 2010, 2012, when I first started playing League of Legends. Right, they were really paving the way for what esports and competitive gaming could do, and I think brought a very real legitimized factor for what playing games competitively means. And so they have basically grown and scaled up their business to the point where they've actually productized, and they've developed a coaching app, which is in the form of blitz.gg. You can go visit the website now. It is not using an Avalanche subnet yet, but it will be. So you might not like it, but your kids are going to love it, type of thing, where I think it will really coach the players.
That's my
Yeah,
line.
no. Go get out of here. So the real value of blitz.gg that we're bringing on chain is it will be a coaching platform to gamers in Valorant, in League of Legends, and I'm not sure what their roadmap is ahead, but I'm feel certain they'll be onboarding future game titles into that coaching application. So that's really where their head is focused, and where they're really trying to get value out of the value proposition that TSM is providing, which is their blitz.gg app.
Well, one thing I wanted to add as well, for any sports fans out there, TSM is the Lakers of gaming. Is probably the right analogy. Apologies if you're not a Lakers fan, but they're that big.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're beyond huge. If I'm not mistaken, I've definitely watched them before, so it's very interesting. And I actually love the fact that they have this focus on coaching as well. I have a little bit of out of the box question for you, Parker. Here, what do you think that this is going to do for esports gaming, like this partnership where they're going to be able to help coach these kids on how to get better at these different games? Like, what do you think this is going to do in the future?
Yeah, I think we're going to see the skill cap slowly start to really increase as the game, and just really find ability for the average gamer to get a lot better at video games because of the accessibility that they have to these coaches. Think of it as being very early in the days of any traditional sport, right? Where there wasn't really professionals. And then once there were professionals, there wasn't that great of access to coaching from them. But now with, applications like blitz.gg and coaching apps, these gamers who maybe traditionally couldn't get coached on things that they're doing wrong can really get that. And it's just increasing the skill gap for these gamers to actually level up into onboarding into the next generation of serious competitive gamers. And I think that's something that's very interesting that, we're going to see. I think I watched a video on YouTube about the average age of competitive esports player is around 20 to 23 years old. But in the previous couple of years, we've seen that age somewhat, the range kind of increase. So it's been 22 to 28, and it's really allowing, I don't know. It's an interesting, statistic to throw out there, but I think we're slowly seeing that, coaching and applications like this increasing the visibility of gaming.
Yeah, I'm excited for that visibility to increase. For everyone out there, I'm not old, but I'm in my mid-tier, man. I'm in my 30s, and back in my day, when you play video games, your parents yelled at you. They said, "What are you doing? You're wasting your time." But it seems like this partnership and everything that Web3 is kind of building is kind of creating a reality where gamers can feel incentivized to play the game into it and be in a position where this could possibly be a career. This is really, really cool, friends, and I'm very excited. Gotta love what's happening on AVAX in Q1. And I want to ask you just a quick overview, Parker. Were you at GDC?
I was at GDC
with the rest of the team.
I was there on the ground.
Oh my goodness. All right. So can you just give us just a quick recap, man? How was GDC? Were there a lot of people like just a lot of regular gamers interested in Web3 games? Talk to me, my friend.
Yeah, I would say that, from an events and just marketing perspective, the teams did, a solid job on the branding. There was no mention of NFTs, of Web3. It was all just us showcasing legitimate games that are leveraging blockchain as an infrastructure. And so that was, a really key driving point that I think the team did, a standout job on. And so gamers would come up to our booth, they would play test the games. We had Shrapnel, Rainy, MetaOps, Pulsar. I could list like all these different games that are just fun to play. And from a real gamer perspective, nobody asked like why would I play this? They all just enjoyed the game, and then we were explaining to them the real use cases that run through each of these different games, and either owning the different assets or being able to have an open game economy. And the reception was very positive because they were able to see and show, not tell. And I think that was like the real winner for us at GDC, was like the show not tell aspect.
Yeah, I think that's a huge win, man. Like I love how Avalanche is branding themselves branding themselves for gamers, with gaming on AVAX. I was talking to Husky while he was at GDC, and he was showing me the booth, and it wasn't even the Avalanche logo. You guys have changed everything up, have completely changed everything up to gaming on AVAX. And, I think that's going to be absolutely huge. And I think it gives a lot of credence to what you're saying about how things are moving, to where Web3 is kind of more so going to be in the background, and we're putting fun and the game in the foreground. So I absolutely love that. And now, folks, we're going to transition to the partnerships and innovations portion, starring Morgan Krupetsky and Daniel Colleen. There were a lot of things that were announced in Q1. We're talking about partnerships with Shopify, Amazon, Intane. Can you folks just kind of talk? Let's start with Shopify, because that's absolute Shopify and TYBXYZ, because those are absolutely huge. Morgan, can you just give us a quick overview of that specific partnership? Just what exactly is going to happen as a result?
I think Morgan left. We're a little over time.
That's all right. We can cover it. Anyone else want to take her spot?
I have to go as well. I apologize. I have a meeting. Feel bad.
Cool. Breevy, you want to give us the wrap, or do you want us to keep going?
I was just talking that whole time on mute. No, I really, really appreciate you for coming out, Daniel. Completely understand. I know we're a little bit over time, my friend, but just wanted to say thank you.
Yep. Go check out Avasance. I've been working on that. It's been taking a while, but it's really cool, and it'll be really fun.
I'm gonna have you back up here, man, so you can give us a full overview about it.
Q3, baby, or Q2. We'll do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Let's do it, my friend. Nathan, would you be able to talk a little bit about the Shopify partnership and everything that's going on with that?
Yeah, it gives them access to referrals, basically. So the integration allows for basically tokenized referral rewards. So why that's important is because it's a very clear non-security. So that's super cool, because it's completely out of the crosshairs of the regulators. And it's a very easy way for all the Shopify stores to bootstrap users by giving them like weird crypto rewards that are totally compliant.
Nathan, I'm assuming you're done talking by the fact that you have muted yourself. Sorry, I'm on a 5-second delay. I can't actually hear Nathan's audio, so I'm listening on my desktop, but there's like a delay. It's very unfortunate. But I'm assuming you're done talking, and I'm assuming you gave an amazing overview of Shopify, of the Shopify experience and everything. I'm going to assume it was so amazing that we don't even need to talk about it any further. But hey, we're going to go ahead and wrap everything up. I'm going to start doing closing remarks, everybody. We're going to start off with Parker. Parker, you got any closing remarks, anything that you wanted to say before we head on out?
I would say that we got our new Gaming on AVAX landing page that you can find via our Gaming on AVAX Twitter account. Feel free to go stop by there. Still definitely building that out in development, but it's definitely a good landing spot for people who are really wanting to learn more about what's going on behind the scenes with Gaming on AVAX. And I think it's a good just reference for you to share to your friends. But that's all I can really plug.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And again, man, Parker, thank you so much for coming on and talking about all the gaming innovations that have been happening in Q1. Hopefully we can do this again in Q2. Nathan, you got any closing remarks that you want to give to the people?
Yeah, we're doing this month. We're opening our incentivized testnet so people can stay in touch with us on Twitter. That's happening in about 2 weeks when we do this subnet summit. Also, we're launching Full Stock, an NFT marketplace for AI creators. So you can create an NFT from any generative AI art or media. You get 10% royalties, and it standardizes commercial IP licensing. So that's launching in about 2 weeks as well.
And I'm going to assume that Nathan's closing remarks were absolutely riveting and earth-shattering. Thank you so much for those remarks, Nathan. Alex, do you have any closing remarks for the people?
I just want to say this was an awesome time. I was taking notes and tweeting about them. And truthfully, sometimes these quarterly reviews are most impactful because you remember how far you've actually come. And honestly, it's really cool. It seems like Avalanche is building a lot of the infrastructure and setting up a lot of the BD partnerships to really grow at scale, kind of for like hyper growth here in the future. So it's an exciting time and looking forward to Q2 review.
All right. And audio is rugged for both of my co-hosts, but I am sure Alex said something really riveting and amazing and beautiful and poetic. And really, really appreciate him for his remarks. My closing remarks are, y'all already know, man, I work for Gogo Pool. Gogo Pool is a decentralized liquid staking protocol with a specific vision of expanding the subnet economy. And make sure you check out our booth at Avalanche Summit. We will for sure be there. So make sure you check out our booth. We're going to be doing a bunch of fun things there. And I'm going to have like a few events and everything like that. So make sure you check in with me and I can go ahead and get you a flyer or something so we can have some fun together. For everyone out there, my beautiful, my lovely audience, I want to say thank y'all so much for coming to the AVAX quarterly review. This was absolutely amazing. We had a whole bunch of partnerships and innovations that came out in Q1. If anybody just is popping into the space, make sure you listen from the beginning so that you can get all of that alpha that was just dropped, because trust me, there was a lot. So anyway, my friends, it has been an absolute pleasure. It is Wednesday. It is hump day, but y'all make sure y'all get over that hump and y'all make sure that y'all enter the rest of the day with love. And y'all already know, I'm going to say my usual statement. One, do this weekly every Wednesday at 3 p.m. EST. Also, again, thank you, Parker. Thank you to my co-hosts. Appreciate y'all so much. But again, weekly, Wednesdays, 3 p.m. EST. And you don't have to go home, but you got to get up out of here, y'all. Peace.